product marketing is plugging into that demand generation team to make sure that, their email campaigns, their chatbots, whatever, have clear and consistent position no matter what medium is being used.
Welcome to the Entail AI podcast, where we go behind the scenes with top marketing leaders and innovators who are driving growth for their brands. In today's episode, we sit down with product marketing veteran and founder of Source Labs, Sargent. He has held several senior marketing positions over the years at companies like New Relic, Apply Tools, Influx Data, and is currently the Senior Director of Product Marketing at DB. Stick around to hear Al's expert approach to making sales enablement work.
Sales enablement, it can encompass anything from just creating, like the basic stuff like one-pagers or like sales collateral that you send to your clients, to your prospects. But you can probably also like really build products, whether it's like demos of your product or any other tool that will show the value to the client. So maybe you can like give a few examples of how you can take sales enablement to the next level and not just do the basic or the obvious stuff.
Yeah, I see sales enablement as, sure, there are the artifacts that you have to create, whether they're the one-pagers or the corporate deck, web content, et cetera. But for me, sales enablement is really getting up there in front of the sales team and explaining to them how to sell the product and having a dialogue where, they're asking you questions and they're saying, okay, thank you for giving me sort of the elevator pitch. Now, what do you do in this type of situation? Or this kind of competitor saying X, how do we respond? So it's really getting out there and having that dialogue with the sales team in their sales meetings. And then also, closing the loop, getting the feedback afterwards and hearing from them and, what worked, what didn't work, what can we do differently? So, it's about getting in front of the sales team and really being part of, and then also not just being, not just delivering the content to the sales team, but also helping them, working side by side with them on their sales calls. So if they're bringing you into their sales calls, that means you're doing a good job. You have enough credibility where they see you as adding value. And ideally, what I look for, both in my own work and also for the product marketing teams that I manage, is I'm looking for how often are people being brought into the sales process. And ideally, in the perfect case, someone's being brought into a lot of different sales calls and actually has to say no and triage and prioritize because it means that the sales team sees them as highly valuable.
And how close are the sales enablement and marketing? Because you could say that marketing is also supposed to support sales, and a lot of the materials, all of the collateral is being prepared by marketing. So how do you, how close are they? How do you make sure they don't overlap or compete, or how do you make sure they align?
So I see, that sales is responsible for the bottom half of the funnel, marketing is responsible for the top half, and product marketing is the glue that enables consistency of positioning and messaging across both halves of that funnel. And so yes, the marketing team, is working with the sort of the demand generation team, if you will. That half of the marketing team is definitely working with the sales team to provide them with quality leads. But product marketing is plugging into that demand generation team to make sure that their positioning, whether it's their email campaigns, their chatbots, whatever, have clear and consistent position no matter what medium is being used. So again, product marketing is about consistency of messaging, and certainly the product marketing team isn't going to be designing drip campaigns or trade show booth graphics or anything like that. That's the marketing team, but the words, the ideas really should be coming from the product marketing team.
And what are really the basic steps of developing content strategy for like developing the sales enablement strategy?
Yeah, so I think with this strategy, I guess for me, it starts with just like the sales team is sort of customer zero, right? You have within that sales team, I typically look at three different types of salespeople. You have your first tier salespeople. They might be called SDRs, sales development reps, BDRs, business development reps. Inside sales is kind of an older team, but whatever that sort of first tier is, that kind of takes those first leads that have been generated through your various demand generation programs and starts to speak to them, qualify them, and understand which of these leads are actually worth processing and graduating to an actual opportunity. Then there's a second tier of sales, the account execs, sales reps, whatever, quoted, typically more senior quoted salespeople who are responsible for pursuing those opportunities and pursuing them to hopefully close one where they're actually driving revenue. And then the third tier, of course, are your sales engineers, sales consultants who are more technical, who help out the account execs with the more technical aspects of sales, whether it's a sales demonstration, a proof of concept, a competitive bake-off, what have you. And so with them, they know the product really deeply. They know the technology really deeply. But what can often happen is they can often really rat hole into a particular area, and where product marketing can help them is to really provide that sort of first broad view of the product and its value propositions, so that the customer really understands that before they deep dive into some particular aspect of the customer's needs or the product capabilities. So those are the three different types of salespeople that you have. Each one of them, has different needs. So, for a BDR, SDR, they're going to need to understand, well, how do you very quickly, qualify somebody in or out, right? And so one thing I find is very helpful is to have if this, then that tables. So in other words, look for these aspects of the lead. Are they interested in this particular technology? Do they have this particular elements to their title? If that, then okay, they're, qualify them up. If they don't have those, or if they're, let's say, if they have another type of title or another type of technology interest from another type of use case, qualify them down. So it's really that, ability to help a inside salesperson very rapidly qualify somebody. And then also another key thing that they need, in addition to be able to qualify up or down, is the ability to very quickly develop a very succinct pitch to the customer to hook their level of interest. Might not go very deep, but it helps give the customer an understanding of why they should continue in the conversation. And it could even talk about, touch on customers that might be top of the prospect's mind, such as, well, how are you different than competitor X or Y or Z? The BDRs, SDRs need to know that. So that's the BDR sales strategy. The account exec strategy is much more about, okay, let's really go deeper into your use case. Let's really understand how we can be a problem solver working jointly with you. And how do we really understand how do we differentiate against the competition? How do we understand the pricing, packaging, how to right size a solution for you? And so really all those deeper things that really touch on steps that go deeper in the funnel. And then on the SE side, like I mentioned, it's really about how do you give them the tools that they need to give an overview of the product or an overview of a capability without rat holing. Or if they're, again, doing some kind of competitive bake-off, yes, you're going to go through the bake-off, but make sure you're hitting these 3 points, which are what we really use to differentiate ourselves against competition. Or when you're doing the demo, make sure you're talking about these key points of the demo and not going off in some random direction, or doing what we call a harbor tour, which is where you just kind of give this sort of tour of all the features without putting in the context of a value prop. Like, why do these features actually matter? That's the other trap that SEs can go into. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about when trying to enable the different, those three different types of salespeople.
One thing I've also encountered in our company is that, you're creating all this content and then, sales enablement materials. And often I get this question from the team is like, how is this different than the content that we create for the website? How is this different from, either articles or feature pages or anything like that? So is this really different, or is it just taking the content from the website and structuring it in a different way? What's really the difference there?
Yeah. So what's in the website is, going to be what you want to publicly present to the customer. So one of the things you're going to be telling a BDR or an AE is, look, qualify down or even qualify out a particular prospect if they exhibit certain attributes. If they're a certain title, if they're using a certain technology, etc. You're not going to put that on your website, how to qualify somebody out or down. Another thing will be objection handling. One thing that we found really helpful is to create sort of positioning documents might start small with a very simple positioning statement. But then what we find is that over time, they'll grow to 30, 40, 50, 60 pages. And what happens is you'll have a lot of these if this, then that discussion guides. Again, you're not going to put those on the website because it kind of walks you through every little last thing. It's your playbook, just like a football team isn't going to publish their playbook on their fan page because their competition could see it. You're not going to publish your discussion guides on the website. And then also, similarly, objection handling too is another specialized form of guide. You're not going to put all of these are all the objections that people have come up with, and here's how to respond. Customers would see that and they would say, oh my gosh, people, there's all kinds of objections people are bringing up. But really what you're doing is you're being thorough and you're just trying to cover the long tail of every type of objection that you might have heard of on various customer calls. So there's a lot of inside strategy that you're just not going to be putting publicly on your webpage that you want to train your sales team.
So how does the process usually work in terms of you have the sales team and they come back to the product marketing team and they tell them, okay, like I need to, there's a challenge that I have with sales. Like I'm being asked this question over and over, or I need to explain a certain topic or a concept. And then the product marketing team will prepare these materials, or would the sales team prepare these materials themselves? How does it usually work?
So if the sales team is preparing their own materials, I see that as a signal that something is broken. And because ideally the product marketing team should be closely plugged in enough with the sales team that the sales team feels like, look, we are product marketing is basically a group that is a shared service. We're shared across all the different sales teams across different geos and industries and so forth. And the sales team should feel comfortable with coming to the product marketing team to have these sales materials being built. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's also important for there to be a regular meeting between the product marketing team and sales leadership to say, these are all our requests and let's go ahead and prioritize them. And the sales team and the sales leadership can be helpful. They could say, look, I want you to prioritize, Jennifer's request higher than Bob's request because Jennifer's working on a much bigger deal. Bob's request, more tactical, less upside there. The second step is working with the sales leadership team to prioritize efforts. Another key thing is that the sales enablement sessions where the product marketing team is delivering these materials, explaining these materials, presenting them, getting feedback on them. That really should be, what I found really helpful is to make that part of the weekly sales team call, or if you have multiple sales team calls, hook into each one of those. And that does a couple of things. First of all, it forces you to be more bite-sized in your sales enablement sessions. In other words, much better to have, okay, here's towards the end of the call, maybe you're reviewing all of your deals, talking about different types of sales initiatives, what have you. And then towards the end of the call, okay, product marketing comes on board. And they're going to be talking anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes about some new piece of content. It might be a new addition to the corporate pitch deck. It might be a new feature that was launched. It might be how to respond to some competitive positioning. It might be something that you heard in your gong calls and you heard an account exec really handle something well. And you're like, hey, I heard about this. I'd like the whole company, the whole sales team to really understand how to present this. So it keeps it really bite-sized and it prevents sort of the death by PowerPoint that can kind of come up when you have like a 60, 90-minute session. That really is sales enablement. That sucks. Yeah, so I think keeping things quick, punchy, and regular is good. And then also if there is something that is kind of coming up, like competitors just released a new feature or they've got a new line of positioning, you can respond to that quickly, within no longer than 1 week's time.
Okay, that's actually quick turnaround if you can do that.
Like I say, product marketing's job is to be really responsive to the sales team and be able to respond quickly. to these types of evolving situations in the field.
Yeah. I mean, when it works, it's really amazing. If you're doing this process and you're basically addressing every issue or every type of question with the right materials, probably end up with quite a lot of different tools and materials that you can use, and these tools help you to navigate the prospect through the journey, right? So how do you how do you manage all that? Because you may really have a lot of materials that you can use, a lot of sales collateral. And so do you create a manual for that? Or how do you make sure that the sales reps know how to use all this material?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One is, so how do you gather the materials, and then how do you make sure they can use it? Breaking down the two halves of that question. So the first half is, I'm a big fan of having, one large intranet page or one large document like a Google Doc that has a table of contents. So a linked table of contents that, essentially goes through each of the different types of questions the sales team might have. So for instance, it might start with high-level positioning. That might be the first thing you put into the document. And then it talks about, okay, how do we do pricing in different scenarios? And you have a section on that. And maybe it will it probably should fork off into different documents. But ideally, you should say, here is the sales playbook that you can go to. And it's one page, bookmark this, start here, and you should be able to find it. If you cannot find it, let product marketing know, and we'll either point to where it is in the document or we'll add it to the document. One of the key things is that the salesperson's time, again, it's about product marketing being really customer responsive. And again, customer zero is the sales team. And so they're your customer. And so part of being customer centered as a product marketer is making sure that you have, one document they can search within that document, they find it. Their time, ultimately, it's understanding that kind of as a concierge to the sales team's time is incredibly valuable, right? And they've got an incredibly high pressure job. They've got to hit quota, or, if they're a BDR, SDR, they've got to process as many leads as possible. If you're an SC, typically there's never enough SCs to go around. Their time is valuable, and you want to make it as efficient for them to work as possible. So one document covers things as much as possible. Again, really putting the content into these discussion guides. If this happens, say this or use that, and maybe, ask this follow-up question, sort of very simple column by column playbook that it's just as much of a cookbook as possible. Don't leave anything to guesswork. So that's the first part of the question. I think the second part of the question you said was how to make sure that they know how to use it, right?
Yeah, it's like navigating. It's like, the customer stories, or it's like almost like the user journey. How to make sure that they know what is the right sequence or which resource to pull when.
Yeah. So one key thing is, whenever we're again, one way in which sales enablement can often suck is that it's not interactive. It's that death by PowerPoint. Product marketer kind of droning on and on. Sales team's like, okay, I don't see how this is relevant to me. I don't see how I can use this. So in addition to make it really contextualized, into these discussion guides, it's also really important to every 3 or 4 or 5 slides that you're giving it. Assuming you're doing a sales enablement session on this, hopefully doing on the weekly sales call or the quarterly QBR or the annual or semi-annual sales kickoff, whatever you're doing, there should always be, every few slides, there should always be sort of a quiz where you're saying, okay, quiz time. And you ask a question. The questions will start really simply, what do we call the new feature we launched? And then it can go from there to more complex questions like, okay, here's a certain pricing scenario. How much should they buy? What would the list price be? Or even better, maybe towards the end of the session, you can present a sort of a mini case study, which might have a paragraph or two where people need to say, okay, what would you propose and why? And how would you pitch it? Being able to get the sales team to be thinking about how to reply back to you is really key, because, they're outgoing people. They're extroverts. They want to be communicating. And so give them a chance to communicate. When they communicate back to you, they're putting that knowledge together in their head. So I think that's a really key thing is, you play it to them, you get them to play back through a quiz. The other thing, and this is something that if you can fit it into a weekly session, that's great. Definitely something to be done in a 30 to 60 minute session, is to gamify things. And so there's tools out there like CrowdPur, Crowd, CROWD, PURR. Originally, we used it kind of for a fun HR type, events for kind of trivia quizzes during COVID to kind of bring teams together. But what was really interesting about it is it's perfect for sales teams because you display online a set of questions, you present a question, display the answers online, or you can do free form, and you get a certain amount of time. It might be 30 seconds, it might be 10 seconds, but you could ever get the correct answer soonest gets the most points. And then it tallies up the most points. And so at the end of that, you see you can see your leaderboard at any time. And at the end of asking several questions, you might see, okay, who's gotten the most correct questions? And this is key for a few reasons. One, salespeople are competitive. A lot of them are, athletes in high school, college. And so this is kind of what they're doing for their career. So they kind of have that natural competitive instinct. Also, if you have sales leadership, and hopefully do have sales leadership on your calls, they can see who's really absorbing and retaining the knowledge and using the knowledge effectively, right? So in real time. So for them, it's kind of a small snippet into the performance of their team. A lot of times, salespeople are coin operated. Maybe all the time they're coin operated. And so you can, at the end of this, ideally, you should have budget for gift cards. So maybe the first place gift card winner for your weekly call gets a $100 gift card. Second is 50, third is 25. And you email that to them after the session. So you make it fun, you make it interactive, you make it competitive, you make it monetarily rewarding, and you put all these things together. And I think you really end up getting a sales team that is engaged during these sessions.
Scaling your content marketing and SEO efforts can be difficult. If you're looking for a partner to help you succeed, Entail AI has the right tools to help you achieve your marketing goals. Find out more at the link in our bio or go to entail.ai to check out our range of solutions.
It's quite challenging to make this to make the sales team, to make sure that everybody is aligned, that everybody knows how to use all the sales collateral, and deliver the message and stay on brand and make sure that that they're performing. I mean, across a large team, it's quite challenging. In terms of like what content and resources you usually prepare for the sales team, is there? I mean, so like we said, like PowerPoint or one pages, of course, but are there any other types of material that companies should consider using? Or also like in terms of like the best practices for preparing them and organizing them?
Yeah. So I guess I look at the product marketing kind of tends to have a couple of two main workflows. One is what I call the evergreen workflow, and the other is called the launch related workflow. So the evergreen workflow will be, look, this is how we position our product, position our company. This is how we position ourselves relative to our top, 1, 2, or 5 competitors. These are things, and I call them evergreen because they come up all the time, right? You might have been dealing with these, if the company is several years old, people have been dealing, there's been a need for this since maybe day one of the company. And it's also really important to not let those get stale. It's important for the product marketing team to go back every, at least every 6 months, certainly no more than a year, and make sure that those evergreen materials are solid. This might be the corporate pitch deck, the first pitch deck, things like that. Then there's the launch-oriented thing. So of course, the product team, the engineering team are constantly producing new capabilities. And so the sales team needs to know, how do we sell this new capability? So those are sort of the two pillars of product marketing work. And just like it's important to continually be launching and launching the new capabilities that are the new features, what have you, that have been coming out of the product and engineering organizations. But it's also important to carve out time to refresh the evergreen materials as well. So for both of those two pillars, it's important to, I think, again, you need to have the internal playbooks. So this is an internal only piece of content. So if I were to look at sort of the bill of materials, if you will, whether it's on the evergreen side of the launch or for each of your launches, you're going to want to have the internal positioning document, which talks about how to position something, how to price it, what sales channels it's going through, how we're tracking success, things like that. You're going to want to have your web page content, making sure that, okay, what product pages are we coming up with? How is this impacting other parts of the website? What blog posts are we coming out with? Also, press releases, to the extent the press releases are being done still, that's important to kind of get out there. And then various decks you're going to want to have. And oftentimes these decks, these various presentations have a lot of overlap to them, but you're going to want to treat them a little bit, whether you're presenting to customers, to industry analysts, to reporters or bloggers, influencers, to various partners who might be working with to sell your things, your products. And so each one of them is going to want to have their own different flavor of things. So for instance, analysts might want to look more at how does this fit, big picture within the industry. For customers, this might be, how does this zero into a particular customer problem? Or, show me 3 to 5 different customer testimonials and tell me those customer stories about how this worked, because a customer might kind of attach those different stories. So those are, I would say that those are kind of the really core pieces. And then as you get, for a bigger launch or a more crucial evergreen feature, you're going to want to do things like a demo. You're going to want to do things like maybe customer testimonial videos. You might do things like, if you're launching an event, you might have, booth graphics or that sort of talk about this new capability. Really any kind of program that the rest of marketing is doing, you're going to want to, hook into. If they're doing podcasts, you might want to do podcasts. You might want to do video.
In this case, I mean, it sounds like there's really like an overlap between product marketing and regular marketing, content marketing. So it's kind of like, I mean, sales enablement is through product marketing is touching everything in the company. So it's basically like, from what I understand, you're saying is that a sales enablement team or whoever's in charge of it gathers the feedback or the requirements from the sales team and navigates or leads the marketing team at creating, all the marketing resources that they're putting out, right? All the content and everything should be geared towards helping, like you say, customer zero, like helping the sales team position the company in the right way so they can sell the product, right?
Exactly. And, product marketing needs to always be looking for leverage. And so sales enablement is a great point of leverage. If you can train, 100 sales reps, then that's wonderful, because, they can be delivering the message for you to, many customers. If you do that well, that means that while it's always good to be in some sales calls, it's kind of a steady diet of customer awareness. You can't be in every sales call. So it's crucial to enable the sales team there. And then for the marketing team, I know this is more about sales and not marketing enablement, but it is crucial to, for the product marketing team to give the rest of marketing what they need to be able to, do whatever they need to do, whether it's, create their drip campaigns, create their advertisements, go to the events and what have you. And maybe the product marketing team is informed in those things. Maybe they're part of the review cycle, but ideally the product marketing team is looking for leverage across the marketing team as well as the sales team.
I mean, in marketing, there's often, or usually there's a way of measuring success. There's KPIs. I mean, if you're doing content marketing and you're driving traffic to your blog, and you can also see, how many people click on book a demo, whatever the call to action is. What are the KPIs and how do you measure the success of your marketing enablement tools? Is it just based on the feedback that you're getting from the sales team? Or is there something like more measurable that you can use?
Yeah. So for sales enablement, again, I break it down into marketing success and sales success, but focusing on the sales side, one really crucial thing is after every sales enablement session, work closely with typically there's a sales enablement manager, sales enablement director who you're working with this person, you're kind of scheduling the different topics. So hopefully you might know, okay, I'm going to present in these weekly sales calls and these quarterly QBRs, but the topics should be planned with the sales enablement director or manager, and maybe there's some representation from sales leadership. So you kind of have this. You're always kind of planning out 2 to 6 weeks ahead, knowing, okay, these are the things we're going to be talking about. And so that way, product marketing knows what they're talking about is relevant. Then after each one of those sessions, it's really crucial to work with your sales enablement director. And by the sales enablement director or market manager, they typically report into sales leadership. It's really important to work with them to put out a survey to all the people you just presented to as a PMM and have a basic feedback survey that goes to the product marketing team. What I like to do is I like to have a simple scale, 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. What's your satisfaction with this session? Of course, this is going out to the sales team who you just presented to. And then ask three questions, really simple. What worked? What didn't work? What to do differently? And then you start getting that feedback. And part of the cadence is when you have your regular sales enablement planning session, that typically would be weekly or every 2-week cadence. You review that. Here's the feedback we got. Here's what is working. Here's what we need to do differently. Here's how we're going to fix it. And so you have this really tight feedback loop from the sales team working with sales management so that you're, again, very customer obsessed with customer zero and how to continue to serve them better and better.
So you keep on saying sales leadership. So if you have a large sales team with like lots of sales reps, usually most of the work is done between the product marketing team and the sales leadership, and then all the materials are later like distributed between all the other reps. So sales leadership is in charge of gathering all the feedback from all the reps, like what worked, what didn't work, or they do it themselves when they review their work, and then they provide the feedback to the product marketing team.
No, sorry if I was unclear. I guess what I like to do is I like to so the survey should get emailed out to all the people you train. So all the SDRs, all the AEs, all the SEs, they respond individually. It could be, Google surveys, for instance. They provide the feedback. You as a product marketing person review that feedback. And then in the weekly sales enablement planning call or discussion meeting, you go ahead and say, okay, here are the trends that we're seeing in the feedback. Here are the trends of what's working. Everybody likes this. Here's what's not working. Here are the top trends. Here's what they think we should do to do better. Of that, we agree with maybe half of it. We're also going to do these other things to improve. So it's kind of this very kind of continual feedback loop and performance improvement loop.
And are there any examples of, now everybody's speaking about AI and so on. Are there any AI tools, or is there any impact of AI on these processes at all?
Yeah, so I see AI as great for brainstorming and ensuring that you're not leaving any areas uncovered in your sales enablement. So, for instance, let's say we're selling a certain type of database to you might plug in, what are the top considerations for XYZ type of database? Plug that into ChatGPT or Gemini or whichever AIs you use, and it might say, okay, here's the distillation. Here are the different considerations. Oh, you might look at ingest speed. You might look at, how large the indexes can be, how fast queries come back, which cloud providers they run on, things like that. And so you can make sure that, okay, when I'm producing my materials, or maybe I'm providing my discussion guide, I need to make sure that I'm addressing all of these different points. Similarly, for customer research, you might plug into an AI, what do people like about competitor X? What do they dislike about competitor X? And then these are things that you could say, okay, well, I know I need to counter these points in my sales enablement. Maybe a competitor has really great data ingest speed. Okay, how are we going to counter that? Are we going to say ingest speed isn't all that important, or are we, it's diminishing returns, we cover it well enough, or we have the better ingest speed, in fact. And another thing is around objection handling. So you could say, what do people dislike about my company, or my product name? And then these are the objections you handle. And conversely, what do people like about my company? These are maybe some key points. So AI is really great about brainstorming, doing brainstorming for building your material. And what would be many, many hours of Google searches can be oftentimes synthesized with, a few well-crafted prompts. So that's one way. The second way, and this is more of an older version of AI, but speech transcription. So, there's for tools like Gong and others have been out for years now. But assuming your company uses these tools to record all their calls, and those calls are transcribed, it's a wealth of information when you think about it, where you can go ahead and you can say, okay, I just launched feature X. A month later, how many reps are talking about feature X? How many customers are talking about feature X? How do those customers like it? And so that's more of a less quantitative but more qualitative way to assess the success of a particular launch. or if a particular competitor is coming up, how often is this competitor coming up, more frequently, less frequently over time? How do people respond? It's like, okay, well, I just did a session on how to respond to competitor X. 2 weeks later, we have some calls. Are people using the positioning that we use? Yes, no. If not, okay, why is that? And then I guess the last, and those are really sort of the two ways in which I see. So brainstorming, and then transcription, and being able to search across those transcripts and think critically about how to use them.
And to finish off, maybe you have an example, like from like years of experience of I don't know, like interesting ways of using sales enablement. I mean, is it like an interesting demo that you built, or a product that really supports sales? Do you have an interesting example for that?
I think the biggest killer around sales enablement, again, talking about these sales enablement sessions, is keeping them fun, keeping them lively. And I think the biggest challenge is around when you talk about your annual kickoffs, because again, in this sort of B2B context, you often have a lot of direct sales reps. And oftentimes, there's a lot of meetings during the day, a lot of socializing at night. People often, aren't getting a whole lot of sleep. And oftentimes, product marketing is on day 2 or day 3. And the very people, the very, SDRs, AEs, SCs who you're counting on to sell your product, their brains are shut after a day or two. And so it's so important to just keep it lively, keep it interactive. And so some of the greatest things we've done are, again, there's where you might say, oh, we've got some limited edition t-shirts, and these might be t-shirts with your company logo on it, but designed in a really cool artistic way. Yeah, we've designed 5 of these, and people are like, that's a cool shirt. And so, okay, whoever answers this question correctly, the first person to answer this question correctly, you get the shirt, and you can huck the shirt across, a conference room, right? Pretty fun stuff. And it gets people so excited, right? Because their stuff's getting thrown around, and people absolutely love that. And people come out of the session feeling like, oh, I learned something, but that was kind of like a party. That was great. That was amazing. In other words, you can quiz and make things interactive without it feeling like a test. Another great thing we did was a whiteboarding session. And so we were learning how to whiteboard the product effectively, where you're kind of showing, on a whiteboard, obviously it presumes in-person meetings. So this is before COVID. And what we would do is huge sales team, I guess a sales team of several thousand people. And what would happen is, out of each of the classrooms, one leader was picked as the top whiteboarder. And this was a kickoff in Las Vegas. And in front of about several thousand people, we had about 3 whiteboarding teams. And what eventually is, you're talking about several thousand people. So people were actually drawing on a projector. And so what ended up happening was the Korean team, who didn't speak English, they said, we're going to do our pitch in Korean. And you saw them doing their pitch on, cloud computing. And they did this phenomenal bang up job, and they ended up winning, because you just thought, wow, these folks, English was their second language. They absolutely nailed the pitch. You could hear, a lot of Korean, and then cloud computing, a lot of Korean virtualization. And it was just so cool to see this sort of global sales team, people from all over the world, just really getting into it and really doing an amazing job. And in front of, several thousand of their colleagues, getting up there and just showing up and nailing it. And again, this is like on day 3 of a very long, exhausting Las Vegas sales kickoff. So I think really, really designing things well in these kinds of annual kickoffs is really, it's a big thing. You're not up there to just monotone and just check the box. You're up there to really have a great, legendary experience that people remember for years to come.
Thank you very much, Al. It's been very interesting, and I've learned a lot. Yeah, so thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Entail AI podcast. Join us next time for another masterclass when we sit down with a marketing luminary to reveal their path to success.